They mocked Earth like it was a joke. A primitive world. Backwater. Uncivilized. The Galactic Council chamber echoed with laughter from the elders of 100 star empires, each older and larger than Earth could ever hope to be. Or so they believed. Earth had only joined the Council 5 years ago. 5 short, painful years. In that time, humanity had been tested, taxed, and tricked, their proposals denied, their technologies ridiculed, their ambassadors ignored. To most of the galaxy, Earth was a child stumbling into a game of gods. Ambassador Mara Lane stood alone at the center of the great dome-shaped council hall, the Earth emblem on her chest, a simple blue-green sphere, glowing softly under the council lights. She didn't flinch as the laughter grew louder. She didn't blink as one of the representatives, a bloated, worm-like creature from the Zentari Union, wheezed through a translator box. Perhaps Earthlings should return to their caves and sticks, leave space to the evolved. More laughter, even from allies who had once promised support. Mara took a slow breath. She scanned the sea of alien faces, the floating delegates, the voice boxes, the scent-based communicators. She knew the game they were playing. What they didn't know was that Earth had stopped playing it months ago. She stepped forward and tapped her communicator. Her voice came through crystal clear, silencing the room. "We thank the Council for its honesty," she said flatly, without emotion. "It has helped humanity understand our place among the stars." "Which is beneath us," sneered an insectoid from the Krell Dominion, its mandibles clacking in amusement. Mara smiled faintly. "Actually, it helped us realize we don't belong here at all." That got their attention. Whispers, quick translations, some confusion. Mara continued, "Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." "Is this a joke?" the High Speaker of the Council asked, his 3 eyes narrowing. "You can't just leave. You're bound by the Treaty of Mutual Progress." "We never signed it," Mara said. "We were pressured, manipulated. Our signatures were forged by diplomatic AIs you designed. We uncovered it all." Silence now. Cold. Thick. Tense. "We've also noticed something," she went on, her voice growing colder. "Every time we introduced a new technology or concept, it was mysteriously banned a week later. But then someone else, one of the elder species, would use it freely. Curious, isn't it?" Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Zentari worm blinked rapidly. "So we stopped sharing," Mara said, "months ago." The silence deepened. "Then what is the purpose of this tantrum?" the High Speaker asked, his voice sharp. "This isn't a tantrum," Mara said. "It's a farewell." And with that, she turned and walked out. Less than an hour later, across over 200 sectors, every Earth ship, military, diplomatic, research, cargo, vanished, simply disappeared. No warp signatures, no trails, no traces. One moment they were in known space, the next, gone. The Council panicked, scouts were dispatched, surveillance drones combed every system Earth was known to operate in. Embassies were found abandoned, scrubbed clean. No data, no AI, not even a used coffee mug. It was like humanity had erased itself. By dawn of the Galactic Standard Clock, a single message arrived on every Council screen, in every known language. "You laughed, now we're gone. We won't come back, but we won't forget." That message was followed by coordinates, empty coordinates. A message in binary left only one line of readable text. "Don't follow." But of course, someone did. And that's when the real story began. 3 days after Earth vanished, fear settled like a thick fog over the Galactic Council. There hadn't been silence like this in centuries, the kind of silence that wasn't peace, but dread. Earth had always been underestimated. A small blue dot at the edge of a mid-tier spiral galaxy, crawling up the tech ladder far behind the rest. And yet, in less than a generation, humans had caught up. And now they were gone. Not destroyed, not defeated. Gone. And that frightened them more than war ever could. Councillor Ra-Tak of the Krell Dominion buzzed in agitation, his black insectoid wings vibrating as he addressed the emergency summit. "This is not acceptable. Humanity has clearly initiated a clandestine operation in violation of the Galactic Accord. Their disappearance is not retreat. It is a prelude to attack." "Attack?" scoffed Councillor Iliv of the Argenzi Spires, a pale amphibious species with 3 tongues and a gentle voice. "You're paranoid. Earthlings couldn't attack us if they tried. They have no fleets, no wormgate control, no interstellar influence." Councillor Ra-Tak slammed a clawed hand on the table. "Exactly, and yet they're nowhere. All traces of their presence scrubbed, even their colonies in the outer rings gone. Not destroyed, empty. Do you understand what that implies?" A long pause. The room felt heavy. "They have developed something," Ra-Tak hissed. "Something we didn't expect." That was the fear none of them wanted to voice. For decades, the Council had monitored Earth like a zoo exhibit. A few mentors assigned to them, mostly low-effort engagements. Trade offers given only after extracting everything useful from their tech. Any signs of human advancement were intervened by bureaucratic sabotage. Red tape, taxes, legal labyrinths, all in the name of galactic safety. Truth was, they feared humanity's unpredictability. Humans didn't think like the rest. They were too emotional, too curious, too desperate to prove themselves. And now, too quiet. An emergency intelligence briefing confirmed the Council's worst suspicions. Humanity hadn't gone dark overnight. They'd been preparing for this moment for years. It began with the Great Data Exodus, quiet transmissions of civilian data, research, literature, and biological logs into encrypted quantum packets, routed off-grid. Next came Project Mothlight, where several known AI cores tied to Earth's defense systems simply went missing. Faked malfunctions, blamed on solar flares. At the time, no one cared. Now those events felt like a chain reaction that had been building in the shadows. Then came the discovery that made even the High Speaker lean back in his throne, eyes wide with horror. Earth itself was gone. The planet still orbited the sun. The atmosphere still glowed blue. But sensors confirmed the entire surface infrastructure, cities, outposts, satellites, was missing. Scans couldn't penetrate the crust. Probes disappeared within seconds of entering orbit. A strange new field covered the Earth. Not a shield, not a cloak. Something different, something never seen before. They called it the Silence Field. The High Speaker stared at the rotating hologram of Earth, mouth dry. "They buried themselves?" "No," whispered Mara Lane, now sitting quietly beside the Council's science corps, no longer an ambassador, but an observer Earth had left behind. "They transcended." The Council turned to her, startled. "You stayed," Ra-Tak demanded. "You didn't go with your species?" "I wasn't invited," she said quietly. "Why?" Iliv asked. She smiled sadly. "Because I told them not to give up. I told them diplomacy would work, that the Council would listen." Another pause. That pain in her voice. It was real, and that made what came next even worse. "They realized the Council never wanted us as equals, just as tools, as pawns, as threats to be managed. So they left." Ra-Tak sneered. "No species can just leave the galaxy." "They didn't leave the galaxy," Mara said. "They left this version of it." No one spoke. They developed something in secret, a fold drive, not warp, not slipstream, something else, a way to unmap themselves from this layer of reality. Impossible, Iliv croaked. That violates base physics. And yet, she said, nodding towards the Earth hologram. There it is. Silence again. The first probe sent toward Earth was a Scout-class drone from the Sarathi Accord, equipped with stealth cloaking and quantum relays. It vanished 10 seconds after entering orbit. No signal, no trace. The second was larger, a fully manned research vessel. 60 scientists, 2 AI cores, and defensive escorts. They transmitted exactly one message before disappearing. It's not a shield, it's not space, it's a decision. That was the last anyone heard from them. The Council finally passed Emergency Resolution 9C, authorizing covert investigation into human silence activities and granting limited military actions if necessary. They didn't understand they were already too late. That night, in the spiral arm closest to Earth's region, a Krell mining fleet vanished. 12 ships, gone. The only clue was a repeating signal left behind. You took from us in silence, now we return it. Then a transmission, not from the fleet, but from deep space. A human voice, calm, cold. Stop looking. Council intelligence panicked. They had assumed humanity would go quietly. They hadn't. And then, the most terrifying event occurred. The Council homeworld, Argelis Prime, was visited. Not attacked. Not invaded. Visited. It began as a glitch in their planetary defense grid, a flicker, a blip. And then, across the night sky, thousands of points of light appeared. Humanoid silhouettes, metallic and massive, drifting slowly in low orbit. No heat signatures, no propulsion trails, just presence. And then every screen, every device, every neural link across the planet blinked, showing the same image. A man, human, middle-aged, pale eyes, no rank insignia, no background. He simply said, "We're watching now," and disappeared. No weapon fired, no threat made. But the silence that followed was worse than war. The Council fell into chaos. Security alliances crumbled. Accusations flew. You provoked them. You restricted their economy. You mocked them into ascension. But no one had answers. Until a secret file emerged. One hidden deep in the Council's black archive. A record buried from the public. Dated 20 years ago. A meeting between Council analysts and Earth scientists. The transcript was chilling. Analyst. But surely, Ambassador Lane, humanity doesn't believe it can outrun the laws of the galaxy? Mara Lane. No, we don't want to outrun them. We want to rewrite them. Analyst. That's impossible. Lane. That's what you said about fire. Steel, flight, AI, telepathy, timefold. Every step of progress was impossible, until we did it. Analyst. You'd threaten the balance of the galaxy. Lane. Maybe the balance needs to be threatened. That conversation had been dismissed at the time. But now it sounded prophetic. The Council realized something they hadn't dared imagine. Humanity didn't leave because it was weak. It left because it had become something stronger than the Council could understand. Mara, still silent among them, stood to leave. You should stop looking, she said, her voice tired. They won't come back the way you expect, if at all. You mocked them for being emotional, unstable. But it was your cruelty that forged them, your arrogance that shaped them. You didn't just wake a sleeping giant, you cornered it. Then why didn't they attack? Ratak hissed. Because they don't need to, she said. And walked away. The next day, on an isolated moon orbiting a dead star, a single Earth ship appeared. Not a fleet, not a battalion, a small cruiser. Sleek, silent, unmarked. Inside was a message pod. Recovered by a desperate Krell patrol, no explosives, no virus, just a single item, a child's drawing. crayon on paper, a stick figure of a human and an alien shaking hands. Below it, in uneven human script, "We wanted to be friends. You made us something else." That was the moment the council understood. They hadn't just lost a member. They had created a myth, a civilization that was no longer playing by the same rules, a ghost empire in the shadows of the stars, a fleet that didn't need to fire a single shot to make the galaxy tremble. Humanity was gone. And yet, everywhere. For a long time, the council obeyed the warning. Don't follow. But rules never lasted in fear-struck governments. Obedience turned to paranoia, and eventually, desperation pushed someone to break the silence. Captain Drev Kaller of the Virex Ascendancy wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't even a politician. He was a soldier, a former war hero, now relegated to patrolling dead sectors for anomalies and illegal mining. The job bored him. He craved legacy. And when he saw the forbidden coordinates left behind by the humans, he didn't see danger. He saw opportunity. "This is our chance to understand what they did," he told his crew, gathered in the silent command bay of the Vindicator-class warship, VSS Ecliptor. They left behind an opening, a mystery. Whatever they've become, they're not gods. They bleed like us. His crew hesitated. The story of the Earth fleet's vanishing was now half legend, half nightmare. The last probe that entered those coordinates had returned nothing. No data, not even wreckage, like space itself erased it. But Kaller was determined. "If we find what's at those coordinates, we take it. Bring it back, use it, before they come back to use it on us." And so the Ecliptor jumped. The coordinates led to the null corridor, a stretch of deep space so black and void that even stars seemed to bend away from it. The systems around it were lifeless. Time felt slower. Sensors flickered. No warp trails. No gravity wells. Nothing. Until they found it. Not a planet, not a fleet, but a structure. A floating ring, enormous, over 400 kilometers wide, slowly spinning in silence. Dark metal, smooth as obsidian, with no entry ports or signs of power. The ring drifted in space like a forgotten god's halo. But to Kaller, it screamed power. "This is a gate," said Science Officer Theron, voice low. "But not like any we've ever seen. No energy spikes. No resonance, just silence." Kaller leaned forward. "Then break the silence." They launched drones, scanners, quantum probes. All were absorbed without a trace. Then the ring pulsed, just once, like it had opened its eyes. The crew gasped as the Ecliptor was slowly dragged forward, not violently, but gently, as if gravity itself had changed its mind. "We're being pulled," said the pilot. "Engines are resisting, but it's like we're falling sideways." "No, not falling," whispered Theron, eyes wide. "Being read." The ship crossed the ring's threshold, and everything blinked white. When they woke, it wasn't to alarms or red lights, but stillness. No stars, no space, just a great black plain stretching in every direction, the Ecliptor hovering over it like a boat above dark water. "We're inside something," the pilot said. Theron ran scans. No metrics, no gravitational constants, no light reflection. "This place doesn't have physics we can measure." Kaller stood. "Then find a way. We came here to learn." That's when the message came through. A human voice, female, calm, ancient. "Why did you follow?" The crew froze. The voice wasn't transmitted through comms. It was inside their minds. Kaller responded aloud, chest puffed. "We're explorers. We seek knowledge. You abandoned the galaxy. We deserve to understand." A pause. "You seek to use, not understand." "Isn't that what you did?" he shot back. "Built this place? Created something beyond the council? What gave you the right?" Suffering, pain, betrayal, and the choice to become more. Then a light appeared on the plain below them. A city. No, a reflection of one. Earth cities, floating like memories. New York, Lagos, Shanghai, London, but distorted, glowing, uninhabited, they descended without command. The ship obeyed a force no one could see. It landed in the middle of a street from a city that should no longer exist. No people, no noise. But everything was too clean, too preserved, like someone had remembered it perfectly. They stepped out. The crew walked slowly, weapons drawn. Buildings towered over them. Banners flapped in wind that didn't exist. Digital billboards played silent recordings of humans smiling, laughing, crying. Theron whispered, "It's not a simulation." Kaller looked at her. "What is it then?" "A memory. A living memory." Then the voice returned. "We left because we were never welcome. You feared our chaos, our fire. So we hid it. We tried peace, diplomacy, but you spat on it. So we embraced what you feared." The sky shifted. Now the city burned. Flames curled up skyscrapers. Sirens echoed. A child screamed. The crew stumbled back, but felt no heat. The fire wasn't real, but the feeling was. Kaller raised his gun. "What is this? A threat? A show?" "A lesson." Suddenly, a form appeared before them. A human man, not armed, not armored, just tired. He looked at them with deep, weary eyes. "You always ask what we became," he said. "You should ask what you turned us into." Kaller stepped forward. "You abandoned unity, the council. You broke interstellar law." The man laughed bitterly. "The council broke us. Every vote we cast was ignored. Every alliance ended in betrayal. Our discoveries stolen, our diplomats silenced. Your laws weren't for peace. They were for control." Theron asked, "Then what is this place?" "This void?" The man looked around. "This is the place between realities, a forge. We call it the Fold. Here we built what you denied us." Kaller narrowed his eyes. "Weapons?" "Purpose," the man said simply. He turned and pointed to a nearby building. Inside, they saw something horrifying. Copies of themselves. Not clones, not simulations. Exact versions, standing in stillness. One for each crew member. Theron gasped. "These are, us?" "Yes," said the man. "We read you, as you read others. We understand you now. Your fears, your hopes, your intentions. This place mirrors your soul." Kaller's copy stepped forward and spoke. "I want to dominate them." Kaller's real face twisted. "What is this? Lies!" But Theron's copy stepped forward too. "I wanted to learn, but I feared what we'd find." Each crew member was faced with their mirrored self, revealing truths even they hadn't spoken aloud. It shattered something inside them. "This is how you decide?" Kaller snapped. "With tricks? With illusions?" The man stepped closer. "No, this is how you decide. We only gave you a mirror." Theron dropped to her knees. "We never wanted war." "We did," whispered her mirror. "You feared they'd be better." Kaller looked around, jaw clenched. "We're not afraid of you." The man's eyes turned sad. "Then why did you come armed?" No answer. The ground began to ripple. The mirror versions faded. The man turned to them one last time. "You came to take, to measure, to weaponize, but humanity isn't something you can dissect anymore. We became a storm, a silence, a choice." Then the light around them collapsed inward. The ecliptor reappeared in normal space, but not where they left. They were at the edge of the known galaxy, their engines offline. Time distorted. Logs showed they'd been gone for 20 minutes. But the crew had aged 2 years. Kaller stood silently on the bridge. He didn't speak for days. The crew gave fragmented reports. No recordings survived the journey. No data logs, not even shipcam footage, just memories. The Council interrogated them endlessly, but there was nothing useful to exploit. Only one message remained, etched into the Ecliptor's hull. We were the fire you refused, so we became the dark that watches. Whispers turned to rumors, rumors turned to fear, and fear, across the Galactic Council, became revolution. It began quietly, as all revolutions do. On the planet Thessar 9, home to a species called the Zeraki, a minor mining civilization under the so-called protection of the Virex ascendancy, miners found a strange black box buried under layers of rock. Inside was no ore, no tech, just a message in perfectly translated Zeraki script. They told you we were weak, but the weak adapt. At first, the overseers dismissed it as a prank, until the mining gear stopped working, until the Zeraki refused to report for shifts, until the AI systems, long locked by Virex code, suddenly rebooted under Zeraki control. Then, across the planet, something turned on. A satellite array, once part of a human survey mission years ago, rose from the sands and broadcasted a signal across all Zeraki devices. A single phrase pulsed across the sky in their language, glowing above the capital. Humanity never left. It simply stopped asking for permission. Within 3 days, Thessar 9 declared independence, and no one, not even the mighty Virex fleet orbiting above, dared retaliate. Because 1 hour before the declaration, every Virex ship in the system went blind. Comms jammed, power flickered, navigation failed. They were left drifting in silence for 15 terrifying minutes, just enough time for fear to root deep in the officers' minds. And then, everything turned back on. With one warning on their fleet dashboards: touch them, and we touch you. After Thessar 9, other systems followed. Not in war, but in awakening. Planets that had been silenced, exploited, taxed, or politically strangled by the Council's web of power suddenly found old human devices reactivating. Stealth caches, abandoned outposts, encrypted libraries. As if Earth had planted seeds before leaving, and now those seeds were blooming. The Sirens, a telepathic species enslaved for centuries by the Argenzi spires, discovered ancient neural shielding tech in an old Earth medical facility. Within days, their masters could no longer control them. The Sirens burned their chains and fled into deep space. Their escape was aided by a ship. No markings. But when it vanished into fold space, the Argenzi flagged one detail, a faint emblem etched into its hull. A blue-green sphere. Earth. Inside the Galactic Council, chaos festered. The High Speaker's voice had grown hoarse over the past weeks, speaking into endless emergency sessions that achieved nothing but noise. "They're spreading rebellion," he snarled to the council chamber. "Not through war, but through ideas. They're poisoning loyalty. Undermining our authority." Councillor Iliv, once soft-spoken, now sounded exhausted. "Or maybe we're seeing the result of centuries of control. Maybe we were wrong." "You sound like them," hissed Ratak of the Krell Dominion. "They never asked for conquest," Iliv replied. "They begged for recognition. You laughed. I laughed. Now the stars are burning in silence." The room fell into a bitter, crackling quiet. Even the Council's vaunted information divisions were struggling. Human signals came and went like ghosts. No consistent source. Messages piggybacked off ancient worm lines. Images showed unidentified human ships escorting rebel vessels through unmapped slipstreams. But the most terrifying change? Humanity no longer spoke. They didn't send demands. They didn't negotiate. They simply appeared when needed, and disappeared without a trace. In the far edge of Council space, the world of Dreltha, long a test bed for Council bioweapons research, saw a different kind of miracle. The population had suffered for generations, mutated fauna, contaminated food, and a Council blockade that denied them aid. Then, overnight, the toxins vanished. Air purifiers, hidden underground, activated. Council satellites went blind. When drones returned, they found clinics, human-built, open, and treating the sick with tech far beyond galactic standard. No one claimed credit. Just a phrase etched into the walls of each clinic. "We remember what was done here. We fix what you broke." The Council called it terrorism. The galaxy called it hope. Back on Argelis Prime, Ambassador Mara Lane walked the quiet gardens of the Council archives. She had become a symbol now, the one human who stayed behind. Some called her a traitor. Others whispered that she was a bridge between the old galaxy and the new. Today, she had a visitor, Councillor Ratak himself. He walked beside her, tall and bristling, his insectoid limbs twitching with restrained rage. "You knew this would happen?" Mara didn't look at him. "I suspected, but you made it happen. They're destabilizing everything." "No," she said. "They're finally correcting it," Ratak hissed. "You always believed in human arrogance, that they could change the stars." "I believed in their pain," she said softly. "You don't understand what you did. You mocked their youth, but you never saw their scars. Earth has fought itself for millennia, bled for progress. They survived extinction multiple times, nuclear threats, ecological collapse, global pandemics. You underestimated what that forges in a species. And what did it forge?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Resentment and vision." In deep space, the Council made one last move. They authorized Operation Leviathan, a secret military mission to build an AI-powered war fleet capable of tracking fold space anomalies and responding with quantum-based weaponry. It was their final answer to the human ghost fleets. The ships were sleek, beautiful, deadly, and they never launched. Because on the night of their commissioning, they simply vanished from the dry docks. No alarms, no sabotage signatures, no explosions, just gone. And in their place, left floating in zero gravity, were children's toys. Tiny plastic soldiers, a stuffed bear, a coloring book with a half-finished page, and written on the hangar wall in Earth's alphabet, "You build war, we raise minds." What the Council never saw, what they couldn't see, was that Earth had become more than a planet. It had become an idea, a network, a movement of minds, AI, outcasts, scientists, and soldiers who had shed their flags and built something new in the folds of space itself. Something not governed by treaties or borders, but by one shared truth. Never again would humanity beg for a seat at someone else's table. They built their own, and others started joining. The Sirens, the Jiraki, even some of the younger Krell generations, who questioned why their species fought so hard to control a galaxy that gave them nothing but orders. In the remains of a human colony destroyed 20 years earlier by Council bombardment. Something rose from the ashes, a spire of black stone, taller than any building, covered in unknown symbols. The Council sent a recon team. What they found inside shook them to their cores. A library, not of books, but of memories. Inside the spire were recorded thoughts. Pain, joy, betrayal, hope, all uploaded from human consciousnesses long ago. Civilians, children, scientists, soldiers. The Council had deleted their records, tried to erase the tragedy. But Earth remembered. Now everyone could see it. The screams, the betrayals, the Council lies. It wasn't just a message, it was evidence, broadcasted across neutral space, and with it came a new phrase, burned into the minds of billions. They erased us, so we became unforgettable. The galaxy was splitting. On one side, the old council, wounded, paranoid, divided. On the other, the Foldborn, as some began calling them, those touched or aided by the silent human fleet, slowly building something beyond politics or conquest. Some called it a rebellion. Some called it evolution. Either way, the stars were shifting. Back on the outer edge of human space, or what had once been charted as such, a single transmission slipped past every known firewall, scramble net, and jamming barrier. A message. No voice, just a screen with white text. From Earth. We will never return to the table you poisoned. We built our own. We're inviting those who know what it means to be silenced. Not to war, but to purpose. Counselor Velia Tarn had spent her entire adult life inside the chambers of power. She had argued over trade laws, voted on planetary sanctions, and even helped write the legislation that once labeled humanity a probationary species unfit for leadership. She had thought she was protecting the balance of the galaxy, ensuring peace. But now, sitting alone in her office, high above the storm-washed skyline of Argelis Prime, Velia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd spent her life defending a lie. The rebellion wasn't coming in fleets. It was coming in truth. And it was winning. Every day, more systems slipped through the Council's fingers. Not through conquest, not through violence, but through something far more dangerous. Choice. They were choosing Earth, not the Earth of old, not the begging diplomats, or the ignored emissaries, or the mocked inventors. No, they were choosing the Earth that had vanished, and then returned as a myth wrapped in silence and strength. They were choosing what Earth had become, and Velia, she couldn't look away anymore. She pulled up the restricted archives, the same ones she'd voted to classify a decade earlier. Footage of Earth's ambassadors being shouted down, technical proposals tossed aside with laughter, trade requests stalled in procedural loops until they expired. She remembered Ambassador Mara Lane. So calm, so composed. She had warned them. Velia had voted against her. And then Earth had left. Now Velia couldn't sleep. Not since she saw the spire on the burnt-out colony. Not since she watched a Jiraki child smile in front of a human-built hospital, raising a flag with no nation behind it. Just that same blue-green sphere. The Council called it propaganda. But Velia saw hope in it. That terrified her more than anything else. She didn't tell anyone about the message that arrived in her personal comms 3 nights ago. No source, no encryption key, just one line. You watched it happen. Now come see what came of it. Attached. A set of coordinates. Not council space, not even mapped. But she recognized the fold pattern. She'd seen it once during the Leviathan project briefings. It was human. She sat with the coordinates for days, staring, arguing with herself. She had power, influence, comfort. But for what? To hold together a crumbling council that silenced voices, hoarded knowledge, and called it peace? She made her choice. Velia left her post under the cover of a diplomatic retreat. Her ship, a sleek Argenzi-class cruiser retrofitted with stealth drives, was technically untraceable. But she knew the Council would know she was gone within a day. Maybe hours. She didn't care. She punched in the coordinates and disappeared into the fold. The journey felt like nothing she'd ever experienced. It wasn't warp. It wasn't slipstream. It was like falling inward, like her mind was unspooling and reweaving itself as the ship twisted through geometry that made no physical sense. When she emerged, space looked the same, but she felt different. And before her floated it, a city in space, not a station, not a fleet. A city, built inside a massive ring orbiting a dead white star, The structure seemed to breathe, alive with soft light and slow pulses of energy. Ships of every design docked in harmony, organic vessels from the Sirens, old Terran cruisers, even reprogrammed council freighters. They had built a home out of pieces no one wanted, and it was thriving. Velia's ship was intercepted by 3 vessels. They didn't hail her, didn't fire, just escorted her, silently, to a dock shaped like a petal. She stepped out alone. Waiting for her was a woman, human, wearing a uniform with no rank, just a single emblem stitched over her chest, the Earth sphere, ringed by symbols from dozens of species. "Counselor Velia Tarn," the woman said with a calm voice. "Welcome to the fold." Velia stared. "You know me?" "We know who watches," she replied. "You didn't fight us. You tried to understand. And then, you listened." Velia followed her through wide walkways, lit by natural skylights that reflected real sunlight, generated by a small artificial star at the heart of the station. The air smelled clean, not synthetic, like Earth. Children ran through the walkways, not just human, Zeraki, Siren. Even a young Krelling chasing a mechanical bird. It felt peaceful, real, and yet nothing like the Council had taught her. No hierarchy, no banners, no propaganda, just people building something. "Why me?" Velia asked quietly. "Because we don't want revenge," the woman said. "We want witnesses." They entered the central chamber. Not a war room, not a command center, a library, circular with floating platforms and neural link pods. All open, all free, and in the center, a fold beacon, an ancient-looking spire humming with soft blue light. "This," said the woman, "is how we share what was denied. Every memory, every voice silenced, every file deleted. We rebuild it here." Velia stepped closer. The spire reacted to her. It displayed a recording of herself 10 years ago. Laughing at a council vote as Earth's ambassador begged for technology sharing rights. Velia stepped back, eyes wide. "We don't hide your sins," the woman said. "We remember them. We study them, because they matter." Velia trembled. "I was wrong." The woman didn't reply with forgiveness. Instead, she said, "So help us make it right." Velia stayed. She was offered no title, no power, just work. She swept floors. She copied documents. She helped translate fragments of forgotten dialects into the Fold archive. And as she worked, she learned. Earth hadn't just built a safe haven. They had built a new structure of reality, one where truth had weight, where pain wasn't erased, but preserved and studied so it couldn't be repeated. They didn't need weapons. They had understanding. And it was far more terrifying. She met defectors from across the galaxy, scientists who had been censored, artists whose work was banned, AI cores freed from council shackles, even descendants of council soldiers who had bombed Earth colonies, now raising children side by side with humans. This wasn't revenge, it was reinvention. But nothing shook Velia more than when she was invited to the memory ring, a chamber buried deep beneath the city, where one by one, former oppressors were asked to relive what they had done, not as punishment, but as perspective. She stepped in and saw her past, every vote, every silence, every time she looked away. She broke down, sobbed, and no one judged her. Only a single voice whispered, "We don't erase, we evolve." When she emerged, something in her had changed. She asked the woman, whose name she finally learned was Elias, what Earth wanted now. "Nothing," Elias said. "You must want something," Velia insisted. "Power? Recognition? We want the galaxy to remember that it's possible to walk away from cruelty and not come back." "And the council?" Elias looked at her. "They'll collapse. Not because we fought them, but because they built their walls too high. Now the stars are passing over them. Velia sent a message back. Not to the Council, to the galaxy. A simple statement. Broadcast in every language. I watched them disappear. Now I see why. They didn't run. They rose. Panic, when it finally gripped the Council in full, didn't come with shouting or screaming. It came with silence. Meetings weren't cancelled. They just stopped happening. Leaders who once fought over protocol and policy now avoided each other. Entire subcommittees dissolved overnight. Council members stopped responding to encrypted comms, and emergency calls went unanswered. The halls of the once great galactic assembly on Argellis Prime echoed with empty footsteps and quiet dread. The galaxy was slipping through their fingers, and they knew it. But they didn't know what to do about it, until someone made a mistake. It was Ratak of the Krell Dominion who called the meeting. He was gaunt now, his chitin dull, his voice thin and brittle with desperation. He'd aged more in 6 months than in 6 decades. He stood in the private war chamber beneath the Council's core tower. No cameras, no records, just a circle of the most hardline, hawkish members left. Those who still believed power could solve what diplomacy and silence had failed to. Councillor Brothan of the Virex, General Sial of the Cerisi, Minister Ronol from the Centauri Syndicate, and a few others, survivors of an ideology that had already lost, pretending the game was still on. Ratak didn't mince words. "We can't compete with their influence," he hissed. "Not with their fold tech. Not with their damn ghost fleets." "Then what do you propose?" Brothan asked, tone bitter. "Surrender?" "No," Ratak said, antennae twitching. "We don't fight humans. We fight what made them." Confusion. Silence. "Explain," said Xiao. Ratak's eyes darkened. "We know Earth ascended into a space we still can't access. Fold space, they call it. But that's just the surface. Our researchers, what's left of them, believe they found something deeper. Something the humans discovered during their rise. Something that helped them break out." Ronol leaned forward. "You mean a weapon?" "No," Ratak said. "I mean a presence. Something buried in their history. Older than the Council. Older than Earth's own recorded time. Something that answered them when the galaxy turned its back." The others shifted uncomfortably. "We've dismissed Earth's early beliefs as myths. Gods, spirits, forces of nature. But what if one of them wasn't a myth? What if something real heard them screaming in the dark?" Brothan scoffed. "You want to fight a ghost story?" "I want to control it," Ratak snapped, and then he presented the final card. A signal, barely translated. Ancient code. Pulled from an illegal black site research lab buried beneath the old Terran colony of Luna 3. The lab had been silent for decades, until recently. It had sent one pulse, 3 words in Terran Latin, ex tenebris lux. From the darkness, light. Accompanied by something else, coordinates that didn't lead to any known fold stream or stellar map. Coordinates pointing to a dead system near the galactic core, an area even humans had never claimed. Brothan paled. "You want us to go there?" "We don't have a choice," Ratak said, voice shaking with certainty. "Humanity changed after they touched this. We've seen the pattern. It wasn't just tech, it was awakening. If we can find the source, they're not gods, they're students. We can become the masters." And so began Project Seraphim, a black operation launched in total secrecy. Only 12 knew. Only one ship was built for the mission. The VSS Rapture. Sleek, black, and armed with every forbidden technology the Council had hoarded over centuries. Fold-inverted hull plating, dimensional stabilizers, AI-manned subsystems that had been banned for fear of sentience, a crew of 50, all volunteers, All sworn to silence, they launched without announcement, vanished into a route no one dared map, toward the unmarked system at the center of everything. The Rapture's journey was quiet at first. Just space, then not space. As they reached the coordinates, instruments failed. Time stretched. Some crew began to whisper of dreams, shared dreams, ones they couldn't explain. They saw shapes in the dark, not ships, not structures, ideas, things that flickered in the edges of perception. Things that felt like they were watching back. Then they saw it. Not a planet, not a station, a monolith, floating in the void, untouched by gravity or time, darker than space itself, but alive with movement that made no logical sense. It seemed to pulse in a rhythm the crew couldn't hear, but could feel in their bones. Commander Estall, leading the Rapture, gave the order. They approached, and the closer they came, the more wrong things became. The crew began to speak in languages they'd never learned. 2 officers had matching visions, a human child holding hands with a being of light and shadow. The AI refused to process any closer readings. It began to recite poetry from dead civilizations. Estall insisted they continue. When they came within a kilometer, a surge of light erupted from the monolith, and they saw it. Not with their eyes, but with their minds, a presence, not alive, not dead, an intelligence beyond language, beyond time. It showed them Earth, not the Earth of soil and oceans, but the idea of Earth, a world that screamed in pain for centuries and kept standing. A race that kept going when logic said stop. A species that believed in something greater, even when beaten into the ground. And it showed them something else. What they had done. The Council's lies. The suppression. The control. It didn't rage. It didn't accuse. It simply remembered. And then it offered a choice. Become more, or become forgotten. Estall reached out, and the monolith responded, not with power, with clarity. The crew fell into unconsciousness. And when they woke, the Rapture was gone. Floating debris, silent. Burnt-out hull fragments spinning through dark space. All systems fried, and at the center of the wreckage, a survivor, Commander Estall, his body intact, but his eyes glowing, not with fire, with knowledge. He said only one thing when recovered weeks later, drifting alone in a stasis pod by a Foldborn scout patrol. They didn't ascend. They were invited. The message hit the Council like a thunderstrike. The project had failed. But worse, the Foldborn had intercepted it. The Council could no longer deny it. Humanity had touched something they couldn't understand. Not God, not machine. A concept. A silent entity that didn't need armies. It gave gifts in exchange for one thing. Truth. And in the absence of truth, it gave nothing. When Velia Tarn received the full decoded message from the Foldborn archivists, she finally understood what Earth had really done. They didn't just run from oppression. They didn't just vanish to be safe. They'd gone to find something that explained their pain. And in return, they built a home, not on dominance, but on memory. The Rapture's failed expedition proved it. The Council didn't want to understand. They wanted to use. And the Presence, it refused them. Across the galaxy, more systems began to leave the Council. Quietly, proudly. Not because they had to, but because now they knew they could. All it took was belief, and a voice whispering from the dark, "You're not alone." The Council was dead in all but name. Its chambers still stood on Argellis Prime, and its members still wore the robes of ancient authority. But the galaxy no longer listened. Trade alliances had withered. Peacekeeping fleets had defected or vanished. Entire species had declared independence, some joining the Foldborn openly, others simply choosing silence over loyalty. And in the center of it all, the once mighty council sat like a rotting tree, hollow, but still casting a long shadow. They had failed to stop Earth. They had failed to control the Foldborn. They had failed to understand the monolith. And now, with all eyes turned away, they turned inward, blaming each other, clawing at the only thing left to control: themselves. Councillor Brothen of the Virex Ascendancy delivered the first strike. During a closed-door summit meant to stabilize what remained of the Council's core leadership, he detonated a silence bomb, an energy weapon that emitted no light, no heat, just raw entropy. It unraveled the atoms of 7 other councillors, leaving only whispers in the air where bodies had stood. He blamed Ratak of the Krell for the disaster of the Rapture mission, claimed he had been infected, touched by the Fold, that he was no longer loyal to the Council, that none of them could be trusted anymore. It wasn't just paranoia, it was strategy. A new faction emerged within hours: the Purity Bloc. Their goal wasn't victory, it was containment. They believed the Foldborn, and by extension humanity, had seeded infection within the Council itself. Not physically, but ideologically. Any councillor who questioned old doctrine was a threat. Any species seeking neutrality was a traitor. The Purity Bloc declared emergency control over all Council assets. AI networks were purged. Civilian data lines were rerouted. Black site prisons reopened. Within days, dozens of non-human workers and aides vanished from Argelis Prime. Just gone. Councillor Velia Tarn, still operating from within the Foldborn network, received the first intercepted message while reading to a group of orphaned Jiraki children in the Echo Dome. Purge initiated. Loyalty over logic. Fold spread must be severed. Prepare for Operation Null Glass. The file was tagged Level Omega. Foldborn analysts decrypted it within hours. It wasn't a tactical plan. It was a doctrine, a list. Thousands of names: councillors, activists, scientists, journalists, civilian leaders, sympathizers, marked for termination, Foldborn allies. Velia stood up from the reading circle, her hands shaking. "They're not going after us," she said quietly to Elias, who stood behind her in the soft glow of the library dome. "They're going after everyone who believes in us." Operation Null Glass was more than a purge. It was reclamation by fear. Council sleeper agents began triggering chaos across neutral systems: infrastructure failures, rogue AI activations, bioengineered outbreaks. Then came the assassinations, key figures in fragile peace talks, Foldborn liaisons, and planetary governors all taken out in precision strikes. And always the message left behind: trust is treason. The Council couldn't beat the Foldborn with ships, so they turned the galaxy against itself. And for a time, it worked. In the Ikora system, where a Foldborn-supported colony had just held its first democratic election, a single Council-engineered virus crashed their entire memory grid. Years of cultural archives were lost. Centuries of identity wiped in hours. The population collapsed into panic. In the Krell border sectors, where young rebels had begun defecting to the Foldborn cause, a synthetic terror broadcast was triggered, showing falsified footage of human ships vaporizing refugee vessels. The Krell elders believed it. They called it proof, and launched a counter-rebellion against their own youth. The galaxy had been awakening. Now it began to close its eyes again, not by choice, but by force. Back in the Fold, the Council's strategy was clear. They couldn't destroy the truth, but they could make it hurt to remember. Elias stood at the helm of the Foldborn command network, watching thousands of reports spill across the interface. Attacks, lies, losses. And then she saw it. A signal from the outskirts of the Siren expanse. An entire moon had gone dark. No Foldborn ships nearby. No military presence. Just a school. She opened the file and felt her chest tighten. The moon had been home to the Rivey School of Memory, a place where children from across the galaxy came to learn not just science or history, but empathy. It was gone. Burned. Not by accident. By a Council strike drone using pre-fold missile tech. Old, dirty, easily deniable, but unmistakable. The report included a survivor's audio. We just wanted to remember. We just wanted to know. Velia returned to Elias that night, her voice raw. "They're not afraid of us winning," she whispered. "They're afraid we already have." Elias didn't reply. She stood in silence, overlooking the city they had built. Then she turned to Velia and asked the question no one had spoken aloud. "Do we fight back?" The Foldborn had always been careful, defensive, surgical. They revealed themselves only when needed, never staying long. Their strength wasn't power, it was conviction. They believed the galaxy would see, would choose, would rise, but now those who rose were being crushed, murdered, erased, and humanity was watching, still silent, still unseen, but no longer distant. Velia saw it first, in the stars above Fold Nexus 1, a single line drawn across the void, not a ship, not a weapon, a rift, space itself splitting, and through it came a shape, sleek, black, familiar, human design, but new. No markings, no crew manifest, no explanation. Just one message. Permission was never ours to ask. It hovered above the city for an hour, and vanished again. Across the fold, other rifts appeared. Ships came through, one by one, then in groups. Some were Earth's original designs, upgraded. Others were hybrids, Siren organic vessels with Terran drives. Reconstructed Ceres warships, now painted with Foldborn colors. Even Council cruisers that had defected and been rebuilt. The Ghost Fleet had returned, not as an army, but as a declaration. And behind it, the humans, not as saviors, not as rulers, but as witnesses to everything the Council had tried to erase. Elias gathered the Foldborn assembly. Thousands stood beneath the Echo Spire, citizens, builders, scientists, survivors, and she addressed them. "Earth showed us that silence is not surrender," she said, "that to walk away is not weakness. But now they come not to fight for us, but with us. And they ask us, what kind of galaxy do we want to become?" They could destroy the Council. With one fleet movement, one fold-coordinated strike, they could raise Argellus Prime to ash. They had the technology, the knowledge, the will. But that would make them the next tyrants. And they had not built the Fold to become a mirror of the Council. They had built it to replace the concept of domination entirely. And so they made a different plan, not destruction, exposure. They would reveal everything. The Foldborn archive would be broadcast across every known system. No more encryption, no more stealth. The truth would flood the stars. Every document, every file, every scream from Earth's dark past, every lie the Council had printed. And when it was done, the galaxy would choose, not at gunpoint, but with open eyes. The transmission began in silence. Across the galaxy, from glittering core worlds to forgotten dust moons, screens flickered. Hollow projectors pulsed. Sleepers awoke as signals pinged their neural interfaces. AI constructs paused mid-sentence. Drones lowered from the skies and stared. There was no countdown, no warning, just a whisper of light. And then the truth spilled into the stars. The Foldborn archive unleashed everything. Raw, unfiltered, unapologetic. Millions of hours of footage. documents once redacted, tribunal records, sealed orders, intercepted communications, council memos outlining planetary-level exploitation, fake terrorist threats, military operations disguised as aid drops. One by one, the lies cracked open like rotten fruit. On a farm colony in the Zevran Belt, a mother sobbed as she watched the execution order for her husband's village, once blamed on a rogue AI. The footage showed it had been council soldiers, laughing as they pulled triggers. On a star liner drifting through the Lamari Drift, a crew of smugglers paused their escape as they watched a broadcast of a human child, bloodied, crying, begging for food outside a council tribunal that had denied Earth humanitarian supplies. A line of text beneath it read, "Deemed inefficient use of resources." And in the mighty capital of Argelis Prime, crowds gathered in silence as the sky lit up with a three-dimensional projection of Earth's final speech to the Council, the one that had been lost to corrupted archives. Ambassador Mara Lane stood in the projection, voice strong, calm. "We came here hoping for unity. We found exploitation. We offered knowledge. You took it and caged us. We offered peace. You weaponized our patience. Now we leave you with what you feared most, a galaxy that knows the truth." Then the screen faded to black. And 4 words appeared. They remembered. So do we. The Council scrambled to respond. Too late. Their data firewalls shattered, their news networks hijacked, their systems flooded with fold-borne signals, Earth-coded truth bursts, and, worst of all, sympathy. For centuries, the Council had ruled not just with power, but with narrative. Now that narrative belonged to the people, revolts broke out, not in violence, but in disobedience. Fleets refused orders. Couriers delivered fold-borne declarations instead of council demands. Entire planets declared themselves witness worlds, refusing to accept either side until all voices had been heard. In a galaxy once ruled by silence, speech returned with vengeance. In a span of 5 galactic days, the Council lost over 70% of its systems. And the Foldborn? They didn't claim them. They didn't build empires. They simply let the people speak. At the heart of the storm, the Foldborn met to decide what came next. In the Aurora Chamber, a vast crystalline forum orbiting the dead white star that once marked the edge of human disappearance, they gathered. Siren mindweavers, Jiraki philosophers, rogue AI sages, defectors, exiles, scientists, builders, and at the center of them all sat the humans, not as kings, not as commanders, but as equals. Elias stood with them, face solemn, and when the time came, she said only this. It was never about ruling. It was always about remembering. Then she turned to the last figure left to speak, a man, tall, gray hair, soft eyes that carried the weight of 10,000 wrongs, Ambassador John Aaron, one of Earth's first diplomats. He stepped forward. No podium, no crowd control. The transmission was live, across every system. He looked into the galaxy, and finally, after years of silence, humanity spoke. We were told we didn't belong. We were told we were too chaotic, too emotional, too wild. And maybe we were. We were messy. We made mistakes. We fought ourselves more than we ever fought others. But we also dreamed. We looked up at the stars and believed we could be more than what we were. And when you mocked us, we still believed. When you silenced us, we remembered. When you erased us, we rebuilt ourselves in the shadows. And now, we offer you the one thing we were never offered. A choice. He paused, then spoke the words that would become legend. You don't have to join us. You don't have to agree with us. You only have to decide for yourself what kind of future you're willing to stand for. Then the screen faded. The galaxy held its breath. In the weeks that followed, Fold-born emissaries moved planet to planet, not to conquer, but to listen. They helped recover lost archives, rebuilt neutral schools, restored power grids long neglected by council indifference. Each system that declared independence was offered support, not governance. And each system that asked to join the fold was told, "You lead yourself. We just walk beside you." Some worlds remained loyal to the Council's memory, holding on to their past with stubborn fists. But even they received no threats, only one message. "We were like you once. On Argelis Prime, the last of the Council members resigned. Ratak disappeared. Brothan was found dead, not by murder but by a purge-triggered AI that mistook him for a sympathizer. And in the ashes of the Great Hall, a message was carved into the floor in over 40 languages. Power is not legacy. Memory is. Humanity never declared themselves rulers. They never raised banners. Their ships came and went like shadows. But in every system touched by them, something stayed behind. A library, a beacon, a school, a quiet corner where anyone could speak and be heard. They built monuments to memory, not stone and metal, but truth and time. And through those monuments, the galaxy began to heal. Velia Tarn returned to Earth. It looked different now, not just physically, but spiritually. The surface shimmered with reconstructed biosities, cloud towers, and forests that sang with embedded AI symphonies. But beneath all that was something older, the memory of pain. Humanity had not erased its scars. They had made art from them. And when Velia stood in the Garden of Ashes, where the ruins of old Geneva were preserved under crystal domes, she wept. Because for the first time in her life, she understood. Earth hadn't vanished to hide. They had vanished to understand. And then, to return as more. One final beacon was lit, positioned deep within fold space, visible only to those who dared look for more. Its message was the last words of Mara Lane, recorded long before she vanished into the fold. "We aren't the heroes of this story. We're just the warning. That when you treat people like shadows, one day they'll learn how to become the night." And the galaxy moved forward. Not perfect, not unified, but aware. 1,000 voices finally free to speak. 1,000 worlds finally free to choose. And floating at the edge of it all, Earth's ghost fleet watched silently, no longer waiting for war. But for what came next? Because the story didn't end here. It had just finally, truly begun.